To introduce our next guest, I'd like to bring up one of your citizens who was actually the second person I met from East Palestine and has become a dear friend. And she's on top of the situation here, and you're lucky to have somebody like that speaking up for you every day and every night. So with that, I'd like to introduce Krista Graves.
Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm Krista Graves, and I look out and I think I know about everybody out here. As you all know, we were all affected differently. Some were right down on the tracks, some were out of town, some were at the 1 mile's edge, and some were out farther. And nobody really knew what to do and what to expect throughout that whole event. I had no idea if my family was supposed to evacuate or not, because initially they told us that malt liquor and frozen vegetables were burning. And then I'm seeing on Facebook that people down near the tracks were being evacuated, and it says my road. They say my road, but they don't show my road on the evacuation map. So my family and I didn't know what we were supposed to do until Sunday night when we were personally advised. And for that, I'll always be thankful. But when I talk to all my newly formed friends throughout the crowd and see how differently we were each affected and how differently this craziness played out in each of our lives, the different symptoms, the different struggles. And I needed to know where that was going to lead us. I needed to learn from a source better than what we were given. And that led me to searching for other disasters, to Times Beach and Love Canal. And I expected there to be tons of data on each of these events from which we could draw experience from. And I found that not to be true. And on YouTube, I found a documentary on Times Beach, and I watched it over and over. And one night, I saw Marilyn Leistner's name on that documentary. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I can get a hold of her. And I typed her name into Facebook, and I found a Marilyn Leistner. I sent a message. I thought, I hope I didn't just open the worst chapter of this lady's life and really upset her. I thought I'd hear from her in the morning because it was pretty late on our time. But in about half an hour to an hour, I got a message back. And she said, hey, I'd love to talk to you, but it's really late. I need to get some sleep. But I'm going to tell you, get as far away from there as fast as you can and take as little as you can with you. And I'll catch up with you tomorrow. And then we went on to talk for 2 hours through Messenger. In their community, they were removed completely. And I've come to believe that that's what we should be doing. I have family members and loved ones in the crowd who have relocated. Some had assistance from Norfolk for a time. Some did not. Some chose not to go that route. And then my family was not allowed because we are 1 to 2 tenths of a mile outside of the 1 mile zone. We were not allowed. We weren't given that option. So I went to where I thought I would learn the best from the people who experienced a similar disaster and a similar chemical exposure to see what I could learn that could help my family and your families. And we've brought my newest best friend with me and her family and her community member here, Frank, so that she can tell you a little bit about their community and what they experienced and how it might relate to how we can apply that to our lives. So without any further, I'd like to introduce Marilyn Leistner and Frank Perler.
Thank you. Before I get into this presentation, I would like to say this. To get that call from Krista was sad for me because I visioned the people of East Palestine experiencing the same things that the people in my community experienced. I can talk a little bit about Times Beach. I graduated from high school there in 1956, and I met my husband. He was home on leave from the Marine Corps. He was stationed at Camp Pendleton in California. At the time I met him, I was also working as a telephone operator in Kirkwood and transferring back and forth, and it was kind of a pain. So in order to make a little money, I would work in the restaurant and make chili because they liked my chili. Eventually, I became really attached to Jerry and his family, and in December of 1956, I moved in with his mom and dad. Our plans were to go to California to get married. In California at the time, a man had to be 21 in order to get married. So his mother decided she and I would make the trip. She would sign the paperwork and we would get married, which we did. I was 4 months pregnant when I came back to Times Beach, and it was a couple of weeks later before he came back to Times Beach. I was very lonesome there. I thought at first it was the most godforsaken place I'd ever seen. After I became acquainted with it and the people and my in-laws, I learned to love the community. I became very much a part of the community. I was a Sunday school teacher. I was the secretary of the church. I did so many things there to make my kids and the community happy. In 1978, my husband developed a seizure, a disorder. He was the road commissioner, and his hands and his face, he just looked horrible. And we took him to doctors to find out what was wrong, and no doctor could tell us what was wrong with him. So finally, a doctor came up with the idea to take him to Dr. Hope, a doctor in St. Louis, who looked at him and diagnosed him with something called porphyria cutanea tarda, which can be associated to the exposure of Times Beach and the dioxin. A few months later, my daughter Jerry Lynn developed a very rare seizure disorder, and the doctors diagnosed it as something psychomatic due to a traumatic experience. And of course, we got her on medicine and taken care of, and it wasn't very long after that, my daughter Tammy developed a goiter. She was like this. Her eyes were bugged in her head. She was very sick. Her blood pressure was up. Her pulse was up. I worked in a medical center for doctors, and I finally got the pediatrician to look at her, and he put her in the hospital, and she was in the hospital 5 weeks being treated for hypothyroidism. Finally, the medicine started to work, and it did help to lower her thyroid. About the same time, my daughter LaDonna developed a problem. Her lips would swell, even with her nose. Her eyes would swell shut. She could hardly breathe. She would have rashes, hives all over her body. And she was in the hospital for 5 weeks. And we couldn't put a name on any of these things or where they came from. I was from a family of 10, and all that was experienced in my family was measles, mumps, and chickenpox. So this was very difficult for me to understand what was going on with my children. Finally, one day, November the 10th, 1982, I got a call at work telling me that a reporter had just discovered that Times Beach was on a list of sites suspected to have been sprayed with a chemical called dioxin. In 1971, myself and my neighbors paid this man $50 a barrel to spray it on our streets to control the dust. In 72 and 73, the city hired this man to spray at will at 6 cents a gallon. Soon after that, people started getting sick. And I can contribute my kids' health problems not to what he sprayed after, but what he sprayed before. The government knew 10 years before we knew that it was there. And they did nothing. They thought that in a year or so it would go away, and it didn't go away. It continually got worse, and we met with the EPA, and they told us that there was nothing they could do, that they didn't have a plan, they didn't have a lab, and it would be a year or so before they could do anything to help us. But in the meantime, I was kind of optimistic. I didn't want to believe it was there. So I called Russell Bliss, the waste oil hauler, and I asked him, did you spray chemicals on our streets containing dioxin? And he said, if I sprayed your streets in 71, there was no dioxin there. If I sprayed them in 72 and 73, they were contaminated. And he told me the name of a lab, Envirodyne Engineers, that could test our streets. So I started collecting money to run the test, because just one test for dioxin to determine if it was there was $2,400. All I could collect was $2,700. So we started sampling, and at the same time, the EPA, learning about this lab, also tested with us. You can see our water tower. We were very proud of that water tower. On December the 3rd, we were told by the Corps of Engineers that the river was going to come up, and it was going to be at extensive levels, and that people needed to move to safer grounds. On December 5th, when the EPA and this lab was testing for the dioxin, my husband and I and my daughter Jerry Lynn and our dog moved out of Times Beach. We went out by boat. That was the only way we could get out. The water crest at 22.88 feet, which was a record set for Times Beach. But the mud and the debris from the floodwaters was all over the community. The EPA, knowing that this was going on, became very concerned and started to help us with cleaning up. They started cleaning up stuff outside the buildings, inside the buildings, and in testing it, they said there was no dioxin in any of the material that they moved. They moved it up to Warrenton, Missouri. In doing all of this work, the first mayor, Joe Capstick, who worked for Monsanto, was told that dioxin's not harmful. So he started rebuilding. He retired, he resigned as mayor, and started rebuilding his house. I was waiting for a call back from the lab. On December the 10th of 1982, Envirodyne engineer called me and said, we have a problem. And I said, well, what's the problem? There's something jamming the spectrometer, and there's only one thing that would do that. And I said, well, what is that? And they said, PCBs. So we not only had dioxin and PCBs, but in all of their work, they discovered that we had 12 chemicals, not just one or two. From then on, the EPA took over. The governor signed an order and gave it to the EPA. The EPA, FEMA, the state of Missouri Health Department, everyone stepped in to help us. We were not allowed to go into town. We were not allowed to go into our houses, but some people had already started rebuilding their homes because they didn't think it was harmful. Finally, we were convinced by labs test on December 23rd of 1953. So in 1983, the state of Missouri, the federal government came to a meeting, it was our Christmas party, and told us how harmful it was, and that if we were in town to get out, if we were out of town, don't go back. So people started trying to rebuild their lives. And at that time, Ronald Reagan signed an order, turned it over to the EPA, and ordered the evacuation of the town and a buyout and relocation of all of the residents. It was through this that we became ex-residents of Times Beach, Missouri. Today, Times Beach has a lab. You can go there and you can see some of the things that,
Is that the museum?
that were part of the community. But in the legislation between the state and the federal government, everything that said dioxin or Times Beach was taken off the highway and out of the town, and that word was not to be in the museum, it was not to be on the highway, it was not to be on the town, it was not to be on any paperwork. They were trying to get rid of the stigma of the dioxin. Of course, the EPA worked to relocate us, and at the same time, this legislation was going on. The federal and state government sued Syntex, and of course was reimbursed for something like $36.5 million, which was the money to buy out the town, to relocate the people, and to make it safe for us to live again. Yes.
Next slide.
The Environmental Protection Agency personnel took samples, and no explanation, they did take samples. On that December 23rd, they told us that they found levels less than 100 parts per billion in the community. We had friends in Washington, D.C. and in St. Louis and the CDC who had been trying for the 10 years that the dioxin was there to bring it to a head and let the people know that it was there. A doctor that was there and a vet anonymously gave the test results to a member of our community who turned those test results over to a newspaper. The state was telling us that levels were less than 100 parts per billion, when in fact the test results showed 1,200 parts per billion. And then there was a problem over that. Actually, the EPA sued the chemical companies. Many people were given money. There were lawsuits, personal injury lawsuits, and many people were given money by 2 or 3 different lawsuits. And the chemical companies were out billions of dollars. And they brought in what we call the Blue Goose, which was an incinerator to incinerate the dioxin. And they cleaned up some 265 million tons of dioxin. They brought the dioxin from the 28 other sites in Missouri to Times Beach to clean it up. And if you tour Times Beach today, and of course if I tour with you, I can show you where the incinerator sat. Because the community flooded, it had to be up high. I can show you where they put the debris that came from the incinerator. It's still all there. And I can show you the mound. We call it the town mound, where everything that was in that community was buried. It was buried in what we call a football field, a 4-sized football field. And around that football field, there are monitors, wells, that monitor what's going on underground. At first, every 6 months, they monitored what was in those wells. Then every year, then 4 years. And now every 5 years, they come in and they take samples of what's in those monitor wells and what is in that mound, in the event that there's something there that's leaching into our groundwater. I will tell you this, there were many sick people, and those people were sick before we knew the dioxin was there. It was 10 years before they told us. And if it hadn't been for a lady named Judy Pyatt, who had a horse arena, who had a horse relationship with Russell Bliss, the sprayer of the chemicals. He sprayed her arena. The birds fell from the ceiling and died. Her dog died. Her cat died. Both her kids ended up in the hospital, and she buried 62 horses. She sued, and even then they didn't tell us. They didn't tell us until the reporter found it on a list of sites in 1982. I will tell you that there are people in Times Beach that have passed away since then. I had a family that lived on a corner from me. The young couple just got married. They had an infant that was born with neuroblastoma. Within 4.5 months, that infant died. They went to 3 different specialists to see if their chances of having another such infant were possible. And they were told by 3 different doctors that there was no chance that another infant would be born with neuroblastoma. Beverly became pregnant, and very shortly a baby was born that died at 6.5 months. Her husband died almost 10 years later with neuroblastoma. I had a couple that lived next door to me that had just moved there. They'd only been there a short while. When they moved there, they had a little boy who was the healthiest little boy you'd ever want to see. After they'd been there a year, Jan became pregnant. The baby was born. The baby was born with all kinds of health problems and died at 4 months. After the buyout and after the family moved away, she became pregnant again and had another infant that was born the same way, and that infant also passed away. I can name cancers. There were 3 cases of neuroblastoma in the community. My husband had neuroblastoma. Two other men in the community had neuroblastoma. We had one man who had both breasts removed due to cancer. We had several women, one young girl, 13 years old, who died from breast cancer. We had a 23-year-old who died from breast cancer. I want the people of this community to become aware that there's a problem from this chemical. And the biggest problem we had was that the doctors didn't know anything about dioxin or how to treat it or what to do with it. It became a problem. In school, our kids that lived in Times Beach went to school And other kids from other communities also went to school. At school, the Times Beach children were separated from the other children and were not to be anywhere near any of the other children, because there was an article, a huge article in the paper that said chloracne was very contagious. And chloracne is a result of dioxin. And those parents didn't want their kids near those children. And so the school's teachers separated the children from Times Beach and the children from the other schools. Today, I have seen people from my community, young people, pass away. I wonder sometimes, is it the dioxin? Or is it something else? But yet, it's difficult to believe that these people lived with this chemical all these years and were so sick. Many of our people are lost. And the people at East Palestine need to find a way to see a doctor, to get examined and taken care of. I know the community is divided. My community was divided. We had 93% of the people that wanted to be bought out and only 7% that wanted to stay. I didn't want to stay. My husband and my children were out. We didn't need to go back. I begged him to let us stay out. For weeks, he and I argued and fussed. I threatened him with divorce. I didn't want to stay. But I came home one night and he said, Marilyn, I'll make a deal with you. He said, if you'll run for mayor, I'll run for marshal and we'll clean this up together. He did. He worked with me. I worked with him. We did everything we can to keep the people out of the site. And a funny story is a truck driver on Interstate 44 drove up to the side of the road, went down into town, picked up a pair of women's panties, some dirty change, a wrench, and a few other things, and he was arrested by the county police. They took him to jail. But because there was nothing in that community of any value, they couldn't prosecute him. They let him go. I will tell you I can tell you so many stories, but the story that I want you to hear is the story that there were many sicknesses, so many similar, the bloody noses, the rashes, the things that I see here in East Palestine that I saw in Times Beach. And we have to pressure our government to do something to see what we can't do to stop what's going on. We took out a petition with thousands of signatures on it, and I wrote an 8-page letter to President Reagan. He was coming to St. Louis in February of 1983 for an RCGA conference. I was not allowed at a conference because I was not a business person, but I sent the messages with a friend. The petition that was signed by over 1,500 people to buy out Times Beach, plus my letter explaining the health problems. I have a document with 14,062 health issues on it. So many of the health issues that I see here. I can't do anything but say a lot of prayers for the people in East Palestine and pray that the people that are here, that are fighting, continue to fight and try to get a resolution. At the time I was working in Times Beach, John Ashcroft had appointed me trustee. We had 28 sites. I was at one of the sites with several EPA members, and one of them said to me, there will never be another buyout of Times Beach. And I said, why? He said, because we have no place to go with any of this stuff. We were sitting in a trailer park with 50 some odd mobile homes. And those mobile home roads had been sprayed with the same chemical that sprayed Times Beach. They said they didn't know what to do with them. They took those mobile homes and cleaned them up to $95,000 a piece and put them back in the trailer park and put them back in the people that lived in them. Because they didn't have any place to put those trailer parks. In Times Beach, the trailer parks are in the mound, what we call the town mound. You have this gentleman here. He has been an enormous help. I can't tell you not to listen to him, because everything I've seen is more than enough to help you people. I petitioned, and you people need to get a petition and send it to the President of the, put a nice heading on it, send it to the President of the United States. He needs to sign a document authorizing the EPA to come in and do something. You people can't live like that. And as I can see, the water, I can't see the water ever being clean in East Palestine. Are there any questions?
Pardon?
Frank, want to say anything?
Frank?
I remember a time Russell Bliss come back in to spray the roads, and they had some problems with a bunch of dead birds, some pets, and they stopped him from spraying. And he got upset at it because he had a whole truckload of oil he needed to get rid of. So we had a park area that we was starting to build, and we had it leveled out and everything. And he drove around there. It was kind of out of sight along the railroad tracks, and he went over there and he dumped that entire load of dioxin and oil mix into that park area, which on one of the slides it showed there, but it was the highest concentration in the entire beach. I just don't understand some of the things that happened and where we're at today, the things we know today, and stuff like this is still going on. You know, to be able to bust holes in the railroad cars and catch them fire and think that would get rid of the problem, when we had an incinerator burning for 10 years where they augered the soil up to loosen it as it went through the burner and got it to the right temperature, and then it went back through again just to get rid of the dioxin, how they thought that just catching the fire where it was. And even if they thought would get rid of it, why wasn't y'all evacuated while it was going on? I don't understand it.
The oil that was dumped in the storm drain in the park, the city got a complaint from a man who had driven on his street that had just been sprayed, and it took the paint off his car. So he called City Hall. He went right to City Hall. And the road commissioner at that time was not my husband. The road commissioner stopped the spraying, but the truck driver went down to our brand new city park, opened the spigot, and ran everything that was in his truck down in our storm drain, which drains into the Merrimack River. And at one point, they tested in the Merrimack, and they did find dioxin in the sediment, and it's still there. They can't clean it up. But they put signs up and down the river that said, limit consumption of the fish from the river to once a month. Would you want to eat those fish? No.
Each year we put on town reunions to keep the community together and stuff. And I put those on each year, and it's just open for anybody that wants to come. And we have different people coming each year, but we have lost a lot of people over the years. It's been a long time. Let's see what else we got. We talked about similarities.
In the early years, in 1983, after, well, we learned about it in 92, in 1983, we asked for a health study. And they told us there was no money for a health study. But they did pick 105 people from some different sites. There were 28 sites in Missouri. And I asked, since my family had health problems, to be put in that study, and they refused because I was a city official. We still don't know the results of that study of 105 people. But we were told that as the people passed away, the state of Missouri would be monitoring the death certificates to see what was going on. We've never heard it. It's over 43 years, and we've never heard a single word about anybody dying or any death certificates. We've heard absolutely nothing. I wanted to talk about some of the issues that we had at Times Beach, which I see similar here. One thing that was constant, and my nose was operated. I talked to Scott Smith all the time about my nose. I had my nose operated on 3 times because it kept bleeding. Rashes, acne. My daughter LaDonna at one point was diagnosed with the start of chloracne. And of course, about that time, she moved away to Lake of the Ozarks. Actually, when she moved away, the rash stopped. All the swelling and the problems, the highs went away. Headaches was something that was very, very common. Horrible headaches. Stomach disorders, bladder infections, eye disorders, heart issues, fatigue, enlarged liver problems, miscarriages, stillborn babies, tumors, menstrual vaginal issues, hypertension, cysts, urinary tract infections, hysterectomies, seizures, teeth problems. A lot of people here I have read about having teeth problems. Ulcers, thyroid dysfunction was one of the biggest things at Times Beach. We learned early on that the chemical attacks the hormones. Loss of hair. People, we had people that lost a lot of their hair, if not all of it. So these are Times Beach issues, and these issues are so similar to the issues that you are experiencing here. Last time I was here, last September, I met a young girl, a beautiful young girl, who had lost all of her hair and was wearing a turban. It was sad. Another thing that is really not on here was marital problems. The second mayor, his wife didn't want to stay there. He wanted to stay. His house was on the 2nd story and was not damaged by the flood, and he wanted to stay, and she did not want to stay. She was scared. They ended up divorced. He ended up in a room at one of our local hotels and tried to kill himself, but the police caught him in time. There were drinking disorders. There was child abuse. And there were so many things attributable to this chemical that you see today. These are the 1983 health issues. And some of this was prior to even knowing that the chemical was there. Hair loss, vaginal infections, thyroid dysfunctions, ulcers, teeth problems, seizures, hysterectomy, urinary tract infections, cysts, hypertension, menstrual vaginal issues, tumors, miscarriages, nosebleeds, enlarged liver problems, fatigue, heart issues, eye disorders, bladder infections, kidney infections, stomach disorders, headaches, nervous and emotional distress. And I can tell you that I was very young. I was having a lot of female problems. My periods were not just 3 or 4 days a month. They were 3 weeks a month. I was having all kinds of menstrual problems. So finally, my doctor said, let's put you in the hospital. Let's do a serious exam and see what is going on. The doctor removed 5 tumors, 5 growths. He said he didn't know what they were, but he removed them anyway. And I had a case of endometriosis, which is really unusual for a woman who has had children to have. Endometriosis is a disorder of the female organs. My daughter had endometriosis, and her doctor told her that if she would have a baby in 3 to 5 months, the endometriosis would go away and not come back. She did have a child, and that child was born with problems. My grandchildren all have problems. It's ADD, ADHD, my first granddaughter was born with a kidney block. 2 of my granddaughters have seizure disorders. It was just passed down the family. My son, who had the rare seizure disorder, they sent him to the Woke Clinic and they radioiodide him. He still today takes a medicine for this problem. It doesn't go away. Don't expect it to go away. You need to get help as soon as possible, right?
Absolutely right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Now-
Marilyn. Give her a big hand.
I'd like to invite, if there's any of the citizens
Do you
here.
have any questions?
Any questions, or if anybody, any of the citizens want to get up and make a statement about what they're going through, please feel free. And as soon as you raise your hand, I'll be back there with the microphone.
Marilyn, my question for you is doctors. Did they address it locally?
I can't hear you.
Did any doctors
Address the situation locally.
The problem we had locally with the health issues was the doctors knew nothing about these chemicals, and they didn't know how to treat the disorders. We had dioxin, PCBs, toluene, benzene, ethyl ether. We had 12 chemicals that they were exposed to. And the doctors didn't know how to treat those. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my husband went to a doctor down in the country who examined him and looked at him and sent him to the doctor in St. Louis, Dr. Hope, who had been appointed the doctor for St. Louis. And Dr. Hope diagnosed his problem as cutaneous tarda. I mean, they have pictures that they can show you of what he looked like before he got sick and what he looked like he got after he got the porphyria cutanea tarda. He was having a internal bleeding problem, and they opened him up and couldn't find any place internally where he was bleeding. We had to put him on pads at night to sleep, and he passed away. And when he passed away, we were ordered to do an autopsy. In that autopsy, it was discovered that the blood was coming from a spot way up in the lungs. But he was not here. We couldn't do anything about it anymore.
Hi, I'm Marilyn. I just want to thank you today. It's Lonnie. Hi. I just want to thank you guys for being here. You can't
Speak
hear
up.
me. Hi, Marilyn. It's Lonnie. I just want to thank you for being here. You and Dr. George Thompson, Krista, Frank, your family. Thank you for being here to help our community, to help East Palestine and our surrounding communities. You know how this has affected
We've
me.
been friends for a little while. We've been
Yeah,
talking
we've been
for
friends for a
long
little
time.
while now. You know how this has affected me personally. My home is at Ground Zero in East Palestine. We were roughly 1,200 feet from where those fires, where they blew that train up unnecessarily. It was uncalled for. I don't understand. I still don't understand. Here we are over 2 years later. We're still fighting for truth and accountability and transparency from our own government and from the EPA. We know for a fact that what they tell us, based on what you experienced, it took over 10 years for your community to be told the truth. How are we supposed to trust them? How are we supposed to trust them?
We don't, we have to keep working.
You know, when I first came here, when Krista first asked me to come, I have a very good friend who worked for the CIA for 31 years, and she was helping me. We were trying to put together 16 huge boxes of my documents, and she started studying some of these things. And today, I mean, she found one of my documents where I had talked to 1,462 people who had health problems. They would come to my temporary city hall and tell me about it. What we're trying to do today, there's over 1,600 written. What we're trying to do today is to put that together and give it to these doctors so that they can look at it and determine what can we do. Is there anything we can do to resolve some of these issues? Let's hope that when Sue gets through with her work, that we'll have a document. I wanted it for today, but she was only up to 600, and I just didn't think that was enough. But when she finishes that document, I would like it to go out to the people so they can see what the people from Times Beach suffered from.
How should we go about moving forward with our lives when this has consumed every part of our lives?
You know what? Say it, how can you move forward? I have the thyroid disorder, and I'm on medicine. I have peripheral neuropathy. I have diabetes, and I have heart problems. I see the doctors, they take care of them. I worry a lot, but we don't have any choice but to go on and hope that somewhere, someone is going to find a solution to the problem that we are all experiencing. And one thing that I was told that makes me angry, and I've written many letters, when I was out at the trailer park where they clean the trailers up. One of the EPM employees told me, Marilyn, there will never be another buyout. And I said, why? He said, what are we gonna do with all this stuff? That was when they cleaned up all those trailers at $95,000 a trailer. At Times Beach, it went into a big hole. I mean, it's a huge, it's 4 football fields deep.
And your community was told that if you were to leave, don't take anything that was in your homes with you.
You were told to leave and not take anything from your homes?
Yeah, we lost a lot, didn't we, Tammy? We were told on December 23rd, after learning on December 5th that it was there, on December 23rd at our Christmas party, we were told, leave town, don't go back, and don't take anything with you. Everything that people owned in their homes, I mean, some of my mother's jewelry, pictures, my family pictures, everything that was in those homes stayed in those homes and is in that huge mound.
Do you still feel like that was the best and safest move for your community?
I believe it was the bestest and safest move for my community. In fact, to talk about something funny, at our last reunion, we had a young man there that wanted to bring his metal detector and find out what was in that mound. There are mobile homes, our city equipment. We wanted to keep our water tower as a monument to what was happened there, but they wouldn't let us keep it. We wanted them to document on a monument the people as they were bought out. There were 2,242 people, 801 families. There was 393 mobile homes. Some of those families lived in mobile homes. But some tried to build and go back, but after hearing all of the news, that they all left. There was nothing there. All of those homes are now buried in a mound. I watched as they bulldozed my home. I think Frank may have a picture of my home as it was bulldozed.
As I was preparing to come back here and speak to you people, I knew that I'd be speaking to a lot of people that have already heard me. And you've seen these charts. There are no new ones in this, although I have dozens of new charts. They weren't appropriate for today. But I wondered, why am I coming back again? And today, I had an experience that answered those prayers. I talked to a young man who's basically feels his life's fallen apart. He doesn't know what to do, and we literally identified 5 issues in his life. He doesn't know how to resolve any one of them. What I said to him was, prioritize your focus. For example, he doesn't have a job. I said, focus on that and get a job today or tomorrow. That doesn't take weeks to do. Just find somebody that wants somebody like you. So that's something that he could do right now. I said the chemical stuff, all this stuff we've been talking about tonight, there's nothing that you can do now by yourselves to deal with that. So leave that to those angels that are working on your behalf. You got 2 here now. You got Mike Stout, but you have a whole bevy of attorneys that are on a long road that's not going to change next week or next month. It might take a couple of years. But I've seen them, I've talked to them, I've had meetings with them, and they've really got good strategies. Trust them. But you can't do that. You've given them your information now. So focus on the parts of your life that you can change. And some of those will be easy to change. Like I told him, send out some resumes for job applications this afternoon. Tomorrow, you can find yourself a job. He's one of them where his marriage is really strained. I said, you gotta make decisions about your marriage, but you can only make one decision. That's your role. Whether she wants to stay married is not your decision. But you have to decide, what do you want? And if you decide you want to stay together, then tell her that and start working down that road, which I can't change for him. But look at the elements of your life that are really compromising you now. They're not all equally important. And yet, when I think about how there's a scripture in the New Testament where James the Apostle says, if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally. Now, that's in God's time. And I know all of you, or many of you, have been praying for the answers to the question you asked, Lonnie. And so we have to wait for them to come in his time. But pray about the things that you can do now and let him help you. I said to this person today, I don't know where the jobs are for you, but I have to believe God's got a job for you to do. Go find it. Pray to him about the job part. Pray to him about the marriage part. Pray to him about the other compromised areas. And so I would emphasize that to all of you. Don't just put it all in one big basket and think I'm a failure. God didn't put you here to fail. He didn't put me here to fail either. And he didn't preserve my life into my 82nd year because I'm done working. He's given me this job, this assignment. And I just want to encourage you that you're not done either, because you're still here. And many of you are younger than I am. So get about the things that you can do. And let those accomplishments encourage you to have the faith in the other areas that you can't do. And watch the miracles unfold in your life. I wasn't sure physically if I could take this trip again. Just because I'm getting old. My body's wearing out. But my tongue isn't wearing out. And my mind isn't wearing out. So here I am. Doing what I can do. But it isn't solving all your problems. You can't solve all your problems either. But trust God can. Doesn't matter how complex they are. So sort out the ones you can do easily and the ones that are going to take more time. And trust that he's here to show you that he will make miracles happen in your life. I've read about Marilyn for a couple of years now. Never thinking that I'd have I'd talk to her on the phone a time or two, maybe even once on Zoom. Never thinking I'd have a chance to meet her. What a blessing to listen to her. And I'm sitting here saying, how can she remember all those dates and details? I can't do that. That's not my capacity. So we have been brought here to help you, but the help is you helping you. Do what you can do now, and don't get hung up constantly. And I know emotionally it's an easy thing to ask. It's a hard thing to do emotionally. But force yourself. Set up strategies so that you can start giving yourself positive feedback. Get one prayer answered so that you can reestablish that God does answer prayers. Or solve one problem so you can say, he did cause a miracle in my life. And I think that's the reason I came this night.
Thank you, George. Anybody else have any questions or any comments they would like to add? Back here, hold on.
Speak up, please.
It's not like,
Tim?
there it goes.
My name is Barbara Adams. I'm 74 years old. I live in New Waterford, Ohio. I just had a complete hysterectomy March 3rd, endometrial cancer, CAT scan March 28th reveals I have stage 4 lung cancer. I have a nodule in my left breast that's been monitored for about a year. So far, it's not cancerous. When I talked to my oncologist at McGee Hospital in Pittsburgh, I told her I was taking ivermectin, and she didn't discourage me from using it. She said that they are doing trials with colon cancer and getting good results using the ivermectin. So you can order it online. I think the site is just ivermectin.com. So that's what I have to offer.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barb.
Anybody else?
One thing that we learned early on from several of the, this mic Steve is not like us.
Just hold it. Just hold the mic.
Just hold it, so.
Just hold the mic, we can pass it around.
Chad wants to say something here, so.
One thing we were told early on by a doctor that I met in,
Chicago.
in Chicago, the governor flew me on an airplane to Chicago, and I met this Dr. Bertram Carnow, and at the time I explained to him about my daughter, Jerry Lynn, being on medicine for seizures, and he said to me, normal medicine for seizures isn't going to work because she has that chemical in her system. It's important to let the doctors know what you've been exposed to, and we have doctors in this country. Dr. Bertram Carnow is now gone. He helped me so many times with problems with the kids and with people. I wish he were still here, but we need to alert this country that there's a problem and that we need doctors. And the one thing we did at Times Beach is we put that petition together. We presented that petition to President Reagan, and I wrote an 8-page letter about all the health problems. We all need to let government know that there's a problem and that it needs a resolution.
Thank you.
That was kind of my question. How do we go about getting the government? I mean, some of us have been to Washington, D.C. We went to senator office after office. How do we get them to open their eyes to see to help us? Like, is there any advice that you could give us to do so they're not just coming to town and talking to our city officials that think that we're all crazy?
If she will give you my name and address and phone number, I have made many, many phone calls. I will make a phone call for you to see what we can do. Believe me, there are other people out there with health problems such as this. We have a man here in East Palestine that had both breasts removed because of breast cancer. Now that cancer is all through his system. In Times Beach, we had a man die from breast cancer. And the only way to solve these problems is to see a doctor and let that doctor know how important this is to you. Let him know you've been exposed to a chemical. We all need to write letters for all of us that are sick. And the most important thing we can do is pray.
Do you have any other suggestions on how to give government attention on our problems? The girl who was speaking last said she's been to DC, she's written letters, she's called, and it's all falling on deaf ears.
I have a friend in the EPA who's now retired that I've worked with that I might be able to contact and get you some help. If you will leave your name and address with Krista, I will do what I can.
I've talked to 2 doctors, and they were told, they said they had a meeting, I don't know if it was EPA or Norfolk Southern, and they were told not to document anything relating to health problems from the derailment.
Doctors here in East Palestine told you that?
Yes.
Yeah. We've heard that.
They were advised by pollution control, I have to take Marley, I didn't hear you. I said the doctors all were advised by poison control not to document symptoms.
Yeah, all the doctors were in fact advised not to document symptoms related to chemical or to test for chemical. They were all told to mark it up as PTSD.
I think that's the case where you tell them to stop it.
Ashley?
You got hospitals that's in on a lawsuit because they would not test anybody for any of the chemicals.
He's saying that, there are hospitals that are getting in on the lawsuit because of the way they were forced into this. Ashley?
We've talked quite a bit,
Raise your voice.
we talked quite a bit, so everyone kind of knows me. Now, there is something else that we heard, I haven't verified this personally. They're not allowing us to donate our blood. We've heard that from residents of Pennsylvania and Ohio. I'm not sure if anyone has encountered that issue, or if you've heard of anything like that as well in Times Beach.
Do you remember whether or not you guys were allowed to give blood in Times Beach or not? Or did they not know any better yet?
No.
You weren't allowed to give blood? No. I know I had talked to a lady who also said she wasn't allowed to give blood.
So that's just what I heard, everyone, so I do want to make sure
We've
that I
had
have
mixed-
it verified.
We've gotten mixed. We've had mixed. Some people said that they were able to give, other people were told they were not, all within the same 1 to 2 mile zone, so it's kind of hit or miss on maybe how much the professional knows.
Go ahead.
One more thing too, if anyone today does have medical issues that they would like to share anonymously, I have been doing a poll and it's on nomoresacrificezone.com. I've shared that. My name is Ashley McCollum, and I will share it again, and I will see if I can get some local groups to pin that at the top. If not, then get my information. Almost anyone here has it or can get a hold of me, and I'll help you guys along the way and see how we can use that to benefit the community and see how we can stop some of these issues that are going on.
I'd like to add to the response of donating blood. I haven't been able to donate blood since 1996 because I have a chemical in my body that a lot of people have. It's called a blood thinner. And that precludes me from donating blood. And so I don't carry guilt because I can't do it. I wouldn't want to pass that on to somebody that didn't have blood thinner in their blood. So the context here is, I would pose a question to you. With the symptoms that you have, and I hope that you've concluded that's from the chemicals you've been exposed to, and the fact that they're continuing now 2 years afterwards is a strong suggestion that those chemicals are still in your body. Do you want to pass that experience on to somebody that you're donating blood to?
I think our concern is the lack of a cohesive message, and if they're gonna tell us that we can't donate blood, but they're not gonna tell us there's anything wrong, they're giving a hypocritical and mixed message, and that's what she's pointing out.
They are.
Early on at Times Beach, we were told that the chemical would stay in our system 7 years and we would pass it on. So if we had children, we would pass it on to our children. There is no cure. All we can do is treatment. See the doctor, tell the doctor what's wrong, and have him treat what's going on with you.
And we do have a couple of good study doctors involved who will help give you suggestions, point you towards somebody, maybe help you advocate with your doctor, help you with, finding your way to work through it. But we all know that there's nobody here that really has one solid treatment option, one solid answer, but we do have allies, and we have angels.
We gotta wrap up here, so.
I'd just like to add a comment here. If there's one thing that I hope you perceived in the charts that I showed is that you haven't been exposed to one chemical. I call it my chemical stew that you were exposed to. And that would be hundreds of chemicals. So the symptoms that you're experiencing aren't necessarily from one chemical. In fact, they're probably not from one chemical. And so when I say easily that this isn't treatable, I don't know what you're trying to treat. The only thing a doctor can do is treat your symptoms, not the chemical that's in your body that's causing that symptoms. And some of these chemicals, once they get in your body, are going to stay there. So that's why I focus on do what you can do. And if you have a doctor that's hesitating to help you with your diagnoses, treating your symptoms, that pleading that he doesn't know the chemicals that you're exposed to, then my business card's out on the front table. Have your doctor contact me and I'll send him the list of chemicals so he can understand the complexity of your exposure. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you, George. I just wanted to add a couple of things here. There's a small group of us right now outside of the area. Myself, Steve Mellon, and a couple of others. We watched what was going on and realized somebody had to come help these folks and work with them. And if you want to know what to do and what you can do to help yourself and help your community, I want to sum up with a couple of things here. Number one, if you listen to what the speakers were saying, information and getting the truth out is one of the main ways we're going to change this reality for you. Getting the truth out means two things. One, letting us know what you're going through so we can let the powers that be know what you're going through. Ashley's survey is critical. Amassing that information about what you're going through, because the argument is you're not going through anything. You're all just faking it. That's the argument. We know that's not true. We need to let them know we know it's not true. And number two, we ain't going away. Information is key. George did a presentation. His presentation is about 40 minutes. We have that presentation online, just like you saw him narrated here with the slides. We can send that to you, and you can show that to your neighbors, show that to your family, show that to your school, etc., etc. Keep the pressure up, and the only thing that keeps the pressure up is the truth. That's what's going to change the reality. Number two, we've established some mechanisms to try to help people, because there's a lawsuit filed, but the lawsuit's going to take 3 years, at least. So we got to keep people alive and as healthy as we can for the next 3 years. So what we did is myself, Robin Lesko, who is the sister you met in the back when you came in that greeted you, Steve Mellon, Mike Blonick. What we're doing is we set up a nonprofit. The nonprofit is called Ohio Valley Derailment Mutual Aid. And what we're doing is we're collecting money specifically to get to people that need help now. I don't care if it's help with medical co-pays, help with getting your electricity and gas going in your places where you live, help with getting a job, whatever you need. We have a survey, and it's called a needs survey. We can send that survey to you, and we're going to, because if you put your name on the list back there, we're going to send you the survey. If you got something wrong with you, or you got something you need, let us know. We've already raised over $10,000. We've passed out over $7,000 already. We're going to keep it up. We're not only going to keep it up, but we're going to raise enough money to get you relocated and get you evacuated out of this place. That's our goal. And I want to say one other thing. There's a lie being spread around this community that those of us that are doing this, myself, George, Steve Mellon, etc., that we're somehow getting big bucks behind the scenes or some nonsense like that. I read today on Facebook. I want to make this clear. We, and myself included, have not and will not take 1 penny. 1 penny. Everything's going to go to you. The nonprofit we set up doesn't have a middle person, doesn't have a bureaucrat running it. It's me. And all I'm doing is the money's coming in and the money's going right back out to people who need it. We've passed out over $6,000 already, and we're going to continue doing it. So fill the needs survey out. We're going to send it to you. We have your name on the list now. We're going to send you an email and also probably a text message. But let us know what you need and what kind of help you need, and we'll do everything we can to get it to you. We are not, you need to understand this. When I was working at the Homestead Mill
and they were shutting it down. I was like the, what we called the, excuse my French here to say, I was a shithouse lawyer for everybody in the mill. And I was the last person left to represent these folks. And one of the company's #1 strategy was to string things out for so long, for so many months, and so many years, they hope you go away. They hope you die. They hope you fade away with the sunset. We're here to tell them we ain't going away. And it took me 9 years to get grievances representing approximately 600 employees, and I was still doing the work 7 years after I never received a penny. And that's what we're doing here too. We're here to facilitate and help you all get yourselves organized. We're not gonna organize for you. You get yourselves organized. All we're gonna do is facilitate, helping you show the places where you can get jobs. Show you the places, we have a food bank. I don't know if people here know that. We have a food distribution once a month. It's usually the first Monday of the month. I got a beeline on some free food, and it basically is food that all the stores have to throw away, you know, because their expiration date is up. Well, they give the food to us, we distribute it. We started out the first distribution in December with 20 families. Next one we had 60. Next one after that we had 240, and the last one we had close to 400. So if you need food, we're gonna let us know, and we'll let you know when the food distribution is. If you need financial assistance, let us know, and we'll do everything we can to get that for you. I know quite a lot of rock musicians in the area, and we're gonna be doing some benefit concerts, rock, blues, you name it, coming up over the next year, including with some big name acts. So we're not going away. And I'm not doing this for money, I'm not doing this for anything else, but to serve you all and help you all get through this disaster. So, my books and my life is wide open. So, and I'm speaking for Steve, speaking for Mike, and for Robin in the back, you know, in the back there when you come in. We're going to be here with you, and we hope that you get involved, because one of the things that's been the most important thing is watching the citizens themselves get together and talk to each other and strategize and help each other out. Because I think you're going to find when it gets down to it, we don't have the government to rely on anymore. We don't have any agencies to rely on. We really don't have any nonprofits. All we got is each other. And that's what's going to pull us through this. And when somebody needs help, we need to have people there to help them. I don't care if it's mental, physical, economic, or whatever. So please, we're going to send you the needs survey. We're going to send you Ashley's survey on your health issues. And we're going to let you know when the next food distribution is. It'll be the first Monday in May. And we're going to have, more importantly, these kind of town hall meetings and these presentations, we ain't going to stop doing them. We're going to keep doing them. Every time I get some money somewhere, I'm going to bring George and Marilyn back here. Marilyn's got a friend named Sue she keeps referring to. Sue did a study on what happens to their kids and what happened to their grandkids after this all happened. That's what's going to happen to your kids and your grandkids. We need to make people aware of that. We're going to bring Marilyn back. We're going to bring Sue back. We're going to keep doing this over and over and over. You know as well as I do, sometimes you got to tell somebody something 5 or 6 times before it sinks in.
Mike,
You know how it is.
she wants to say one more thing. Can you bring her mic, because ours died?
Mike, I have a suggestion offered to you. At Times Beach, the local churches formed what was called the Ecumenical Dioxin Response Task Force. Those people, even street people, not just religious people, formed a group. They fed the hungry, they paid the bills. There was all kinds of help for those people. If you could get your ecumenical people together here, it would be a big help to a lot of people.
And we're going to work on that. That is a good suggestion. Thank you.
Any other questions out there or comments?
I got one thing to say.
Mike?
I can probably say it loud enough. I came in with some groceries if anybody needs them. We're parked out just down the street.
I'll say it again over the mic. My name's Mike. We brought in some groceries, not a ton of stuff, but if anybody needs anything, just let me know. We'll meet you out at the car. So.
Thank you, Michael. Mike, over here's a hand. Mike?
Anybody else?
Right here, Mike.
Yes. My name is John Williams. I want to compliment everyone who played a part in this. I have been following this since day one. I speak from experience. I've been fighting cancer for about 25 years now. It's a battle. It's a battle. But you can beat that enemy. Some of you who were here earlier saw, and this is also is from what I speak. I've had, and I appreciate the doctor. There are some things that I have discovered in the last couple of years, but I have come from a background, industrial background, as Mike kind of. But with 5.5 years of chemistry of all kinds, pharmacological, organic, inorganic, and so that in the application in the industry. I was looking through about 8 pages of the notes that I've taken over the last 2 years in the research that I have done, and I did bring that model. That is 2378 TCED, which is probably the biggest culprit. I'm glad to hear from the doctor about so many other involvements of chemicals. I would just like, I went back through my notes, and there's a couple or 3 things, and Marilyn did a great job. I've studied Times Beach again for 2 years. If I can find them without losing track. One of the things that jumped out at me is if you could build a house with this stuff, it would last forever. And I've seen so many mistakes, and I hear stories of East Palestine. I've been there many times. And they talk, I was visiting a church up in New Brighton, and there was a fellow up there who knew it. He was talking about East Palestine. He said, I know a guy that he's doing contracting up there in East Palestine, and he's making about $85,000 a month cleaning up after that. And I said, cleaning up what? And he said, well, the chemicals. And I said, you're talking about the dioxins. One of the remarkable things about dioxins, that what you see there in that model, it is not water soluble. You cannot clean it up with soap and water. It is fat soluble, and that's part of the problem. Once it is ingested, it makes its way to the fatty organs, the liver, not only in humans, but also in animals. And I'm terribly concerned and have been about all the pasture animals that may have been butchered and sold for meat. And once those dioxins, where they're out grazing in the pasture, and they're picking up where the fallout from that cloud, and they're getting it into their system, and then they get killed and processed, and where that ends up, and so that can be easily absorbed. Those things that I had just checked off, I think I'll just go to one page here. You can do a lot of research if you're computer literate. Just do a search on dioxins, but this one page has something that if I didn't read it, why I would be amiss. Everyone's here. Fate of dioxins in human body. Dioxins are absorbed well from the digestive tract if they are dissolved in fats or oils, fish or meat. On the other hand, dioxins tend to absorb tightly to soil particles, and absorption may be quite low, 13.8% of a given dose of TEQs, and the doctor could explain that. Also PCDDs, if he likes. The same features causing persistence of dioxins in the environment also cause very slow elimination in humans and animals. Because of low water solubility, kidneys cannot excrete them in urine as such. They must first be metabolized to more water-soluble metabolites, but that metabolism, especially in humans, is extremely slow. It results in biological half-lives of several years for all dioxins. That of TCBD is estimated to be 7 to 8 years. And for other PCDDs/Fs, from 1.4 to 13 years. PCDFs on average slightly shorter than PCDDs. In mammals, dioxins are found mostly in fat. Concentrations in fat seem to be relatively similar, be it serum fat, adipose tissue fat, or milk fat. This permits measuring dioxin burden by analyzing breast milk. Initially, however, at least in laboratory animals, after a single dose, high concentrations are found in the liver, but in a few days, adipose tissue will predominate. In rat liver, however, high doses cause induction of CYPIA2 enzyme, and the doctor can talk about that if he's aware. And this binds dioxins. Thus, depending on the dose, the ratio of fat and liver tissue concentrations may vary considerably in rodents. So it seems like, it could be a tough battle.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Anybody else?
If anybody didn't see this is a dioxin molecule that he has made and taken to different things that we've done, and we brought it up here so that everybody can see the molecule that everybody hates.
The half-life of dioxin is 500 million years. That's how long it's going to be in the soil and the water here. 500 million years. We need to get you the hell out of here. I'm not talking about Columbiana. I'm talking about the places where the plume flew over, which was basically East Palestine, north toward Youngstown, and east into Darlington, Chippewa, that area. People over there don't even know. They're not even being tested over there.
We're not being tested either.
Nobody cares. We're going to make them care. We're going to make them care by continually speaking out and raising our voices. And the more of us that get together and raise our voices, the louder we're going to get and the more powerful our message is going to get. And that's what's going to make them look at the petitions we give them. That's what's going to make them get the doctors in line to do the research needed to be done. When they hear that you're getting yourselves organized and you ain't going away.
Mike, she has another comment.
I want to say just one thing to you. I'm very good friends with the attorney who represented the general who authorized the spraying of Vietnam. When he authorized that spraying, he was not told what the chemical was and what it would do. So he therefore authorized the spraying of Vietnam. and of course, he came out innocent in the trial.
Anybody else? Speak your mind. This is America here, you can say whatever you want.
Just one quick addition. No, that's okay. You can repeat what I said. In order to incinerate and affect the incineration, the soil or anything else that's being incinerated has to be incinerated at 1,000 degrees in order to break down that very, very strong molecule.
Did everybody hear that?
Nobody does that.
In order to get complete combustion, you have to burn it at over 1,000 degrees to get rid of that specific molecule.
Otherwise, it gets carried back into the atmosphere.
Thank you, John. Anybody else want to offer any comments or say anything? All I can ask you to do is please get involved when we send you this information. These surveys, get it back to us, and when people reach out and need help, let's make sure they got some of us with our hands out to help them. So thank you very much for coming out on this nice weekday. And I want you to know, like George said something about, like, a lot of you, the only person here older than George is Marilyn. And Marilyn's 87 years old, but I think that's BS if you want to know the truth. I think she's more like about 25, and I think her spirit is ageless. That's what we need. Thank you, Marilyn.